Today's lesson is just like riding a bike. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about riding a bicycle, okay? And it's not just about riding bicycles, but it's about remembering how to ride a bicycle and what kind of memory that is. And then there's another kind of memory that we're going to talk about as well.
Right. So in English, we have a saying, which is just like riding a bike, or it's just like riding a bike. When we want to talk about a skill that we learn, and if we don't practice this skill for a long time, we never forget it. And that is the same case with riding a bike. Once you learn how to ride a bike, you'll never forget how to ride one.
Exactly. So sometimes we say it's easy as 1, 2, 3. It's easy peasy. I think in Chinese you say 易如反掌. It's a similar phrase. Yeah, it's just like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never forget. It's so easy. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll be right back to discuss it.
Just like riding a bike. It's said that using certain skills is just like riding a bike. In other words, once they've been mastered, you never forget them. And it's true that while we often forget facts, we can typically hop on a bike and pedal away without thinking about it.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到单字 pedal， 这个动词指的是骑脚踏车或是踩踏板。例如We spent the morning pedaling along the riverside bike path. 我们早上沿着河滨单车步道骑脚踏车。或者 He pedaled as fast as he could so as not to be late for school. 他尽全力踩着脚踏车，这样上学才不会迟到。另外，这个字也可以当名词，意思是踏板。例如 Pushing down on the pedal will cause the car to speed up. 踩下这个踏板会让车子加速。又或者说I need to change the pedals on my bicycle. 我需要更换我的脚踏车踏板。
So the first sentence of our lesson says, It's said that using certain skills is, quote-unquote, just like riding a bike. So as we mentioned before, certain skills are learned and never forgotten. In other words, once they've been mastered, you never forget them.
So I guess the idea there is that, when you're about 5 or 6 years old, give or take a couple of years, you learn how to ride a bicycle. Then let's say later on, after you graduate from high school, you probably don't ride a bike for many years. And then when you're like 45 or something, you decide, hey, I'm going to go rent a U-bike or something like that. And you get on it and you think, oh, maybe I've forgotten how to ride, but actually you have no problem, even though you haven't ridden in several years.
That's right. And it's true that while we often forget facts like names and numbers, we can typically hop on a bike and pedal away without thinking about it. So just as Roger had mentioned before, we might learn how to ride a bike when we're kids, and then we might go through a long period without riding one. And then later on, we decide to ride one and we still know how to do it. And at that point, we're able to hop on a bike and pedal away without thinking. So when you pedal, you're moving a bicycle by pushing the pedals. And the pedals are that part of a bicycle, or it could be the part of a machine that you push with your feet in order to operate that bicycle or machine.
Exactly. So that's how you make a bicycle go. You pedal the bicycle and you put your feet on the pedals. So we use the same word there for the action and then the actual thing that you put your feet on. The pedals on my bicycle are kind of slow. I need to put some oil in them. Or today I pedaled my bicycle to school. I just also wanted to mention that we do use the word ride when we talk about a bicycle. Did you ride your bicycle today? And we also use the word ride for your motorcycle or for your scooter, but you do not ride a car. You drive a car, although you do ride a bus. So those are some words you might need to know in everyday conversation. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's go on now to the second part.
But why are you generally still able to ride a bike even after having not ridden one for years? The answer is that certain skills, such as how to drive or play an instrument, are part of our procedural memory, a kind of long-term memory involved in performing different procedures. And while these procedures may be difficult to learn, once acquired, they're almost never forgotten.
接着第二部分，我们看到名词 procedure， 它的意思是程序、步骤或是手续。举例来说 ，The entire procedure will take about an hour。这项程序大约要花1小时。又或者说 ，My dad said that installing new headlights is a simple procedure, but I don't believe him。我爸爸说安装新车头灯的步骤很简单，不过我可不信他的话。再来，我们看到单字 acquire。这个字是动词，指的是学到、获得或是养成。例如 Stephanie acquired a great deal of historical knowledge by reading. Stephanie 透过阅读学到大量的历史知识。或是 In order to acquire anything in the material world, money is key. 为了能在这个物质世界中获得任何东西，金钱是关键。
So we mentioned in the first part that riding a bike is something that we never forget once we've learned how to do it. But the question is, why are you generally still able to ride a bike even after having not ridden one for years? So that's a question that's very interesting. Why is riding a bike a skill that we never forget and we're prone to forget other skills and other knowledge that we've learned when we were younger?
Exactly. So yes, the bicycle is one example. Juggling is another example, at least for me. When I was younger, I learned how to juggle 3 balls. I never quite got up to 4, but I figured out how to juggle 3 balls. And then I didn't do it for many, many years until I was outside one time and there were 3 baseballs on the ground. And I thought, I haven't juggled in many years. Maybe I could juggle those baseballs. And sure enough, I was able to juggle as if I had juggled only yesterday. So yes, indeed, we do ask this question. Yeah, generally speaking, why are you still able to ride a bike after having not ridden one for years? Well, the answer is that certain skills, such as how to drive or play an instrument, like the piano or the trumpet, are part of our procedural memory, a kind of long-term memory involved in performing different procedures. So that's one kind of memory. We're calling it procedural memory. This word does not occur very often in everyday speech. The word procedure does. If you work for a certain company, of course, maybe somebody has to teach you the procedure, how things are done and in what order. But here, it's being used as an adjective having to do with procedures, procedural memory.
Right. So the word procedure here refers to a way of doing something, especially a way that is the correct way as opposed to the wrong way of doing something. So for instance, if you're going to cook something, then you may have to follow the procedures listed in a recipe. Otherwise, your dish is going to come out wrong. And here, procedural memory, the word procedural is an adjective that comes from procedure and it modifies memory, and that suggests that this type of memory that's associated with riding a bike has to do with the steps of doing something, the steps involved in doing something in order to do it correctly.
Exactly. And we're also calling this a long-term memory, which is a kind of memory that lasts years and years. You always have it in your head, and you're probably not going to forget it. And the opposite, of course, would be short-term memory, which we'll get to later on. And again, procedural memory is a kind of long-term memory that helps you with different procedures. And while these procedures may be difficult to learn, once acquired, they're almost never forgotten. Indeed, when you first learned how to ride a bike, it may have been a very frustrating experience. It may have taken you a long time to get the hang of it, to figure out how it works. But once you learned, everything fell into place, and you've been able to ride a bicycle ever since.
Right. So once you acquire the skill of riding a bicycle, you'll never forget it. And here, the verb acquire means to obtain or to get something. So I could also say, Bob acquired the family business after his father passed away. Or Bob got, obtained, received the family business after his father passed away.
Right, or you might acquire Japanese speaking skills if you live in Japan for a long time. So again, once you acquire these skills, once you get them, once you figure things out, you'll probably never forget them, at least not until you die. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part and talk some more about procedural memory.
This phenomenon derives from procedural memory being stored in a different region of the brain from declarative memory, the type of memory responsible for recalling information like names, dates, and events from your life. Studies indicate that the cells in the region storing procedural memory are more resistant to loss and trauma. Therefore, procedural memories are rarely erased. Now that you know why we don't forget how to ride a bicycle, can you name other skills that you're also unlikely to ever forget?
第三部分我们看到单字 phenomenon， 这个字是名词，意思是现象。举例来说 ，Lightning is a natural phenomenon that releases a large amount of energy。闪电是一种释放大量能量的自然现象。或是 Last night I saw an unusual phenomenon, bright lights in the sky above my house. 昨晚我看到一个奇特的现象，在我家上空出现亮光。最后我们看到单字 resistant， 这个字是形容词，意思是有抵抗力的，不受点点点损害的，或是抵制的。例如 Some species of mosquito are becoming resistant to insecticides. 有些品种的蚊子变得对杀虫剂有抗药性了。或是 Many farmers grow carrots during the winter months as they are resistant to cold temperatures. 许多农夫会在冬季月份种植胡萝卜，因为胡萝卜耐低温。另外补充它的相关名词 resistance, R-E-S-I-S-T-A-N-C-E, resistance. 它的意思是抵抗或是抵抗力。例如 The building's roof is designed for wind resistance. 这栋建筑物的屋顶设计能抗风。再举一个例子Exercise helps increase the body's resistance to some diseases. 运动有助于增加身体对于某些疾病的抵抗力。
So again, we're talking about the memory of learning how to ride a bicycle or riding a bicycle. And the following sentence says, this phenomenon derives from procedural memory being stored in a different region of the brain from declarative memory, the type of memory responsible for recalling information like names, dates, and events from your life. So here we're making a distinction between two types of memories. One is procedural and one is declarative. Now, the phenomenon that we're talking about here is the phenomenon or the situation of learning how to ride a bike and then never forgetting how to do that. So that would be an example of a phenomenon. A phenomenon is an event or a situation that exists, that happens, and it's something that you can see, that you can prove. So I can also say that earthquakes are a common phenomenon that people experience in Taiwan. Earthquakes happen a lot, so it's a phenomenon. So the phenomenon of never forgetting how to ride a bike derives from procedural memory. And here the word derive means to come from. You can also say people who are vegans, who don't eat meat, they don't eat food that is derived or that come from animals.
Exactly. So to derive means to get something from something else. Maybe we could say steel is derived from iron ore through certain processes. And so again, we're talking about this phenomenon of never forgetting how to ride a bicycle or how to play a musical instrument or how to walk, for that matter. And of course, it comes from the fact that procedural memory is stored in a different region of the brain, and it's different from declarative memory. So that's the other kind of memory we're talking about today, declarative memory. That's related to the word declare, which is a verb. If you declare something, you just make a statement. You say something is fact. Okay, so basically, declarative memory has to do with recalling information like names, dates, and events from your life. This is kind of interesting because recently I've been trying to write about my college days, and in my freshman year I was trying to remember the names of different people I lived with or spent time with in my dormitory back then, but a lot of the names escape me. I just can't remember their names. So yes, indeed, I can't recall that information like names and dates and events from your life, like when they happened or something like that. So here we've got the verb to recall, which means to basically remember something.
Right. I could also say, I don't recall anything from my early childhood, or I don't remember anything from my early childhood. So while it's difficult to recall things that are stored in your declarative memory, like names and numbers, it's a lot easier to remember skills like swimming, riding a bike, and juggling that are stored in one's procedural memory.
Now, the next sentence here says, studies indicate that the cells in the region storing procedural memory are more resistant to loss and trauma. Therefore, procedural memories are rarely erased. So yes, we've got some studies or some research, and these studies indicate, or they kind of let us know, that the cells in the region of your brain which store procedural memory are more resistant to loss and trauma. So here we've got the verb resistant, and it's often used in the phrase to be resistant to something. Like I could say, modern forms of bacteria are getting more resistant to antibiotics. So please be careful there. So yes, resistant is an adjective, and it comes from the verb to resist, which means to not do something that somebody else or something else is trying to make you do.
Right, so these types of memories that are stored in that particular part of the brain that stores procedural memories are more resistant to loss, which means that it's more difficult for them to get lost, and they are also more resistant to trauma. Trauma is a bad experience that a person has. This experience could happen in one's childhood, teenage years, or even later on in life, and it's usually an experience that makes a person feel really bad, really upset, or afraid, or maybe they got shocked from that experience. Like soldiers who went to war might experience trauma from seeing a lot of people get killed and seeing bombs go off. And even after the war, after they've gone home, they're unable to forget those memories. So that would be considered a trauma. So these memories that are stored in these procedural memories are more resistant to trauma, which means they are not affected by trauma.
Exactly. So maybe you've known somebody who has amnesia. Maybe they suffered some sort of accident, or they learned some really shocking information and they responded by just forgetting everything. But still, even though they can't remember names and places and things like that, they still remember how to walk and how to talk and things like that. Therefore, procedural memories are rarely erased. So they kind of just stay there in your hard drive, and it's very difficult to get rid of those memories, whereas declarative memories can be erased through various ways, probably through time, because over the years you kind of forget things. Now here's the final paragraph. It says, now that you know why we don't forget how to ride a bicycle, can you name other skills that you're also unlikely to ever forget? So now that just means at this moment, because of circumstances, now you know, and because you know, then then maybe you can name other skills that you're unlikely to forget. So here we've got the word name as a verb that just means to state something or to list things. Can you name any other skills? I've named a couple, like the ability to walk or to juggle. Can you name any other skills that you're unlikely to forget, Helen?
Swimming is a skill that I will probably never forget now that I've learned how to do it.
That's one. And there are probably many other skills that people have learned as well that they'll probably never forget how to do. And that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's turn things over now to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分有提到陈述记忆，负责记得你生活中的姓名、日期和事件等等讯息。那文中它是用 the type of memory responsible for 去表达。这时候 responsible 前面省略了关系代名词和 be 动词。好，那我们就来整理一下 be responsible for 的相关用法。第一个呢，你可以用它来表达负责什么、掌管什么、对什么负有全责，就像课文里面也是这样的用法，它不带有负面的语义。我们看2个例句哦。In general, the left side of the brain is responsible for language and speech. 大致上来说，大脑的左侧是负责掌管语言和说话能力。或者是我们也可以说 Jeremy is responsible for organizing the office party.Jeremy 负责筹划办公室派对。这时候我们讲到这个负责掌管啊、负责筹划啊，都没有带有负面的意涵嘛。那我们来看看第2个用法是，你可以用 be responsible for 去表达对什么负有责任，尤其是对意外啊、过错、罪行等等是负有责任，这时候就带有负面语义咯。举例来说 Derek was responsible for the accident. Derek 要为那一场意外事故负责。第3个用法是，我们可以用来表达造成、导致，用来表达说某人或某事物就是什么什么的原因。像 The snowstorm was responsible for numerous accidents in the area. 暴风雪在那个区域造成多起意外事故，也就是说暴风雪是造成那些意外事故的原因。接着读到课文下一句，研究显示储存程序记忆区域中的细胞较能抵抗丧失和损伤。那文中是用 more resistant to loss and trauma 来表达较能抵抗丧失和损伤。这个 resistant 它就是形容有抵抗力的，不受损害的。那它的动词 resist 就有反抗、抵抗的意思。我们来学习它的字首字根。好，当你看到 SIST 这个字根呢，它可以表达站立、放置或者是处于某种状态。在 resist 这个字当中，它的字首 RE 表示反抗， SIST 是处于某种状态，那合在一起那就是处于反抗状态嘛，所以 resist 它就有抵抗、抗拒、反抗的意思。我们也顺便补充几个有相同字根的单字。第一个是 consist， 它的字首 CON 表示一起， SIST 表示摆放，把所有东西摆放在一起来构成整体，这样应该可以想到 consist 它有组成、构成的意思。第2个补充的是 persist， 它的字首 PER 表示完全地， SIST 表示站立。如果从头到尾都站在那里，完全不动如山，屹立不摇，应该可以想到 persist 它有坚持不懈、持续存在的意思了。好，第3个补充则是 insist， 它的字首 IN 表示在什么之上，那么 SIST 表示站立。当你站在某个立场之上，采取这个立场而不让步，我们用这样的方式去联想 insist 它有坚持、主张的意思。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Pedal. Cassie enjoyed the sunshine as she pedaled her bike through the park. Procedure. Changing a car's oil is a simple procedure that takes just a few steps. Acquire. Bart acquired his ability to speak Spanish while studying in Mexico. Phenomenon. The Northern Lights are a strange and beautiful natural phenomenon. Derive. The film's success derived largely from the popularity of the book it was based on. Recall. Charlie knew he had met the man before, but he couldn't recall where. Trauma. Nancy suffered significant trauma, including several broken bones, after falling off her bike.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter, and here's the question. Do you think it's easier to form procedural memories or declarative memories, and why?
Well, I think declarative memories are easier to form because they take less time to memorize and to learn. So it's easy to learn the name of somebody, but it's probably more difficult to keep that name in your mind.
Absolutely. Well, based on what people have told me and things I've read, I think procedural memories are easier to form because when we're younger, of course, we want to learn how to do things because all the other kids are learning how to do those things. We don't want to look dumb, so we probably learn how to ride a bicycle fairly quickly. And of course, that's one reason why these procedural memories form so quickly.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.